I have been working on a number of poems since I recorded the original YouTube for Harris Greenwood Poetry. And I've got 2 new poems to add, both of them cowboy poems. The first one is the Guy Clark song/poem, and it's entitled The Indian Cowboy. The only thing you need to know is Indian cowboys need a princess. So growing up, I was working in surgery at Methodist Hospital in Houston, and in surgery I was a scrub nurse, and we had a circulate nurse in there who was full-blooded Indian from Oklahoma, named Walita Tarwater from Ponca City, Oklahoma. And so as I started learning this poem, I figured out we needed to give this Indian cowboy an Indian princess, and so I plugged in Walita into the poem. You also need to know that this is about a circus. In circuses, they have elephants, and when elephants start screaming, they sound like Louis Armstrong trying to learn how to play the trumpet when he first started. And you also need to know that circuses have trapeze and high wire walkers, and the family that's been doing that for the last 100 years is the Walinda family. And you also need to know that whenever you have a circus, you have a lot of animals, and animals require a lot of hay. And since these circuses occur in tents, they don't have all the normal electricity, but they have lanterns with actual fire in them. And so you have always the possibility and danger of a big fire with all that hay and all those lanterns. So this poem, Indian Cowboy, goes something like this. If you ever go out to the circus, where the Walindas walk on high wires, I'll tell you a tale to remember when you see white horses jumping through fires. That was a cold night in Ponca City, Oklahoma. The show was about to begin. The animals, they was all restless when the white mare broke from her pen. She was wild-eyed and high-spirited, just like Walita at the dance hall on Saturday night, as he went kicking and bucking past the hombres that was brushing the elephants lying down on their sides. Next to the tent, there was lanterns, dangerous close to the hay. When the wild-eyed mare saw the flickering sparks from the lantern, she headed straight for a lantern some fool had left in her way. Then up stepped the Indian cowboy, like magic. His lasso twirled through the air. Smack dab in the middle of all that danger, he roped the wild-eyed runaway mare. Then the elephants raised up their trumpets. 2 of them broke free from their chains as they stampeded, charged, trampled, and killed the Indian cowboy who had just saved the big top from the wild-eyed runaway flames. So if you ever go out to the circus where the Walindas walk on high wires, please don't forget the brave-hearted Indian cowboy when you see white horses jumping through fire. This is Harris Greenwood. I'm back. I forgot to tell you, I'm trying to record 2 add-on cowboy poems to the 30-something poems that we recorded back in late October and November. But what I forgot to tell you when I did the first one, which was The Indian Cowboy by Guy Clark, I forgot to tell you that we were sitting here at the ranch outside High, Texas, in the middle of an international pandemic, the coronavirus, COVID-19, I think they call it. And we can't go out to the ranch, and I can't let anybody come in. So I had, on the first 30, we had Chad Martin, who was doing all the production and sound and video and photography, and he had an assistant helping him with it. And they came out to the range to do it. Well, we can't do that right now, but I'd like to go ahead and get these 2 cowboy poems down, and I think I may have already just gotten the Indian Cowboy done. And the second poem is a poem by Ed Bruce, and it's called The Last Cowboy Song. Been recorded by a whole lot of different people. Obviously, they like it. When you're singing, you have a guitar, and you got to sing and do all those things, and you tend to try to keep them pretty simple. But when you're just reciting them, you have a little more time and you can put some things in. So what I've done is I've added a lot of things to Ed Bruce's The Last Cowboy Song, and little things I thought that historically it would be good to add some things where they were relevant to what Ed Bruce had put down. So the second thing you need to know is I merged Ed Bruce's poem/song, The Last Cowboy Song, with Garth Brooks's song, they call the thing a rodeo. And so starting at the beginning of the poem, I've added a lot of things, and when he talks about blazing a trail with Lewis and Clark, well, I say, yeah, and there was a pretty important lady on that trip by the name of Sacagawea. So we have to mention her because she was awfully important, maybe about the most important person on that whole expedition. Next thing he talks about is Wyatt, and you know he's talking about Wyatt Earp, and I don't know whether he was thinking about him in Dodge City or Tombstone, but Wyatt was a great sheriff in the Wild West, and in his later years he started slowing down on the draw. There are two things that Ed Bruce said, and that is that he faced this gunfighter and backed down. Well, I think he might have backed down, but I don't think he backed down out of fear, so he just didn't want to kill another cowboy. And the second thing was, in his old age, as his pistol drawing got slower and slower, and he became more vulnerable, he had a really good friend and a fellow by the name of Doc Holliday, that you've all probably heard of. And Doc was the fastest thing, like greased lightning, they used to say. And so every now and then, Doc had to come in and rescue Wyatt and take over the shootout. And I mentioned Doc in this poem. And then the other thing, his signature piece of equipment was what they call the buntline special. So I thought we ought to mention the buntline special. And so I did. Then when we talk about Travis in Texas, we're talking about the Alamo. But it wasn't just the cowboy, it was a lot of special cowboys. Those included Jim Bowie, Davy Crockett, and there were a whole bunch of Tennessee volunteers. So I threw those guys in there. And also the villain, at least for here, Texas, the villain, was a fellow by the name of Santa Anna. And Santa Anna had them surrounded there at the Alamo and definitely outnumbered by thousands. And he got his bugle to play what they called degala, and degala meant no quarter. That meant they were playing these bugles telling the cowboys in the Alamo that they weren't going to be taking any prisoners, and that was the last song those guys heard. And then he talks about Custer at the Little Bighorn, and of course the most important protagonists up there were two Native Americans, one called Sitting Bull and the other was Crazy Horse. So I threw those guys in there. I talked about chasing Poncho in the Chihuahua Desert. I talked about Texas Rangers, and I added in other additional people. There was a guy named J. Frank Dobie at University of Texas, and he was the authority on the Wild West, and particularly the cattle drive era. And according to J. Frank Dobie, there was a cowboy that wrote a book called We Headed 'Em North, and that cowboy's name was Teddy Blue. And Dobie says that was the real last of the great cattle drive cowboys. And so I had to mention Teddy Blue. And Teddy had a really good friend in Calamity Jane, and he'd see her every now and then. And I remember a great story where she came running across the street and said, "Teddy, I need $200 and I need it now, and I just got to have it." And he reached in his pocket and had $200 and he gave it to her. And about 4 years later, he was in another city, I don't know, Dodge City or what, Wichita or where it was, but all of a sudden there she was, hadn't seen her in 3 or 4 years, came running across the street and said, "Teddy, here's the $200 you loaned me." I don't know if that happened too much today if somebody loaned somebody that money. So anyway, I think those are most of the things that you need to know that I've kind of added and put a little more flavor, a little more history, and add a few ladies. And so anyway, let's see if we can do the Last Cowboy Song by Ed Bruce with the add-on trailer of Garth Brooks. Now this is the Last Cowboy Song, the end of a 100-year waltz. Voices sound sad as they're singing along, another piece of America lost. Well, he rides in a feedlot and clerks in the market on weekends, selling scratch-off tobacco and beer. His dreams of tomorrow are surrounded by fences, but tonight he'll dream of when fences weren't here. 'Cause this is that last cowboy song, the end of his 100-year waltz. Voices sound sad as they're singing along, another piece of America lost. Well, he blazed a trail with Lewis and Clark, followed Sacagawea all the way across the Louisiana Purchase to its most northwestern Pacific part. Stared eyeball to eyeball with White's buntline special and never showed fear. So White, he backed down and told Doc to let that cowboy live another year. Stood shoulder to shoulder with Travis in Texas, alongside Bowie, Crockett, and the Tennessee Volunteers, when Santa Anna's bugles played the gala, was the last song those cowboys would ever hear. Rode with Custer and the 7th Cavalry all the way to the Little Big Horn, like lambs to the slaughter as Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse just kept leading them on. And that was those cowboys' last song, the end of their 100-year waltz. Voices sound sad as they're singing along for that piece of American history that we just need to let it go, gone. And Remington and Dahlberg showed how he looked on canvas and bronze, while Louis L'Amour told us all his tales. Willie, Waylon, and Ed put him in songs and wished to God they'd rode with him all those cattle drive trails. And the old Chisholm Trail is now covered in concrete as they truck him to market on 50-foot rigs. Just blow past his market, never considering he was more than a kid. Just treat him like living and dying is all that he did. And that was that cowboy's last song, the end of his 100-year waltz. Voices sound sad as they're singing along for that piece of America lost. Now he chased Poncho in the Chihuahua Desert with the wild-eyed Texas Rangers, survived rattlesnakes, Indian outlaws, and all those other Wild West dangers. A cowboy knows how to survive. By the time those rascals are 10 years old, they know how to shoot and to rope and to ride. And if you want to see one of those cowpokes, you just got to go to your nearest county fairgrounds and the newest next Garth Brooks Wild West show, where you'll see folks dressed up just like you, or Calamity Jane, Buffalo Bill, or Teddy Blue. Because it's bulls and blood, it's the dust and the mud, it's the roar of a Sunday crowd. It's the white in his knuckles and the gold in his buckle that he'll win on his next go ride. It's boots and chaps and cowboy hats, it's spurs and let her go. It's the rope and the reins and the joy and the pain. And they call the thing a rodeo. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the Cowboys' next song. And it's good for another 100-year waltz. Voices sound glad as they're singing along, for the American cowboy just keeps riding on. Sometime in the last couple of months, Clint Eastwood was playing golf with a good friend by the name of Toby Keith, who's a country western singer and songwriter. And sometime during the round of golf, Clint turned to Toby and said, "Toby, on Monday, I'm going to turn 88 years old." And Toby says, "Wow, Clint, that's amazing." Says, "What are you going to do?" Clint said, "Well, I've got a meeting on Monday to organize and complete the funding on my next movie that I'm going to produce and direct." Toby says, "Well, you're just amazing, Clint. How do you stay so vibrant and awake and mentally sharp to be doing all these things you're doing at this age?" And Clint said, "Well, that's no problem. It's pretty easy." He says, "If you want to stay young, keep your mind sharp as a pin, wake up every morning and don't let the old man in. He's always knocking on your door. That's how it always begins. You want to leave him alone, and you just can't leave it to him. So whatever you do, just don't let the old man in. I've known all my life that someday all this would end. So every day I go outside so I can't hear him barking and scratching like an old hound dog trying to get in. Many moons I have lived. My body's all weathered and worn, so I just keep asking myself, how old would I be if I didn't know the day I was born? So you need to just keep loving on your wife, stay close to your friends, toast each sunset with wine, and don't let the old man in. It don't matter how many moons you've lived, never no mind, your body's all tattered and torn. Just keep asking yourself, how old would you be if you didn't know the day you were born? So when he rides up on his horse and you feel his cold winter wind, just look out of your window and smile and tell the old man not to come back again. Just look out your window and give him your best Clint Eastwood grin, and for God's sake and yours, please don't let the old man come in. That's it.